B. So if you look at these answers, the parking spots aren't going to change. What's going to change in the next 3 to 4 months? The contingency fund's going to go a little bit higher, a little bit lower. There could be bylaw meetings and this type of thing happening, but you can generally see those in the minutes. So there's really not a lot that's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 months unless they have an AGM. My answer typically when people ask me that question, I say, has there been an AGM in the last 3 or 4 months? They go, no, it's scheduled for 2 months from now. I say, well, then a Form B that's 3 or 4 months old likely has very little changes, because most things on here are only going to change at a AGM or special general meeting. So if you want to,
I think lawyers require it to be 30 days. So they would have to get a new Form B prior to conveyance if there wasn't one available from the buyer's agent or seller's agent.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the lawyer would want that for, because the lawyer orders a Form F, which states how much money is owing. So the lawyers and notaries typically order the Form F about 1 to 2 days before completion. And it basically has this number on it, how much money the owner owes. And you can look up a Form F later. We're not going to do that now, but they typically get that 1 or 2 days before completion, and that's how much money shows up on the statement of adjustments for what the seller owes. So this doesn't help the lawyer a lot, but the Form F does. Okay, so that is the Form B. And you know, when you get it, check these things out so the seller's agent has time to get you a revised Form B with the correct information on it. Any questions about the Form B?
Yeah, we have a lot of what are called non-compliant duplexes where two unit owners. So I guess basically we've been getting the other side to sign the Form B or get both signatures on it. That would be the best. Do you have any special instructions in regards to filling one of those out?
Well, typically in Vancouver, what we do is we don't use a Form B when there's 2 owners. We simply just call it a non-conforming strata. And we use that non-conforming strata clause, which says buyer's aware there's no minutes, contingency fund, Form B, that type of thing. So we don't do a Form B when it's 2 owners. But you can if you want.
Maybe you could send that wording out.
It's in Dropbox under, just search the word non-conforming. It's both in web forms, under brokerage clauses, and Dropbox.
Okay, never seen them.
Yeah, it's called non-conforming strata. So whenever you sell a strata that's not being run in accordance with the Strata Property Act, you have to disclose that to the buyer. So make sure that you do that. Because all stratas, whether there's 2 owners in a strata or 100, they need to follow the Strata Property Act by having a contingency fund, having a depreciation report, having an annual meeting, all those things. And so if they're not doing that, make sure the buyer is notified of that in writing. It's a non-conforming strata. Okay. Strata plan. So if you remember, this was strata lot 18. And there it is. And so on a strata plan, what I'm doing, again, is I'm checking for accuracy of the square footage that the agent advertised. So here's 97.6 square meters. And you can use your conversion calculator to figure out what that is in square feet. So you can look on MLS. Oh, 97.6. So that's 1,050 square feet, 1,051 square feet. So we'll look later to see what the realtor has on MLS for if it's 1,050 or not. But in my opinion, that's one of the only things you need to use the strata plan for, is to just to make sure the square footage is different.
You got to look at limited common property because it'll be marked down there for decks or.
Yeah, that's a good thing as well. Yeah. Yeah, so just check out the strata plan to see what's happening. Some buildings have the balcony included in the strata lot, and some of them have it separate, like this one does. So just figure out what you're doing and what's happening with it, making sure you're selling the right unit. You know, strata lot 18, because sometimes people, you know, put 16 on MLS instead of 18 type thing. So you can see where the unit's located in the complex.
The one I see the most is the garage being included in the square footage.
Wow. Yeah.
And
Yeah, you as
really
realtors
the only way to fix that is to measure the garage or take the measurements off the plan and subtract it out.
exactly. Yeah.
If they're included, they don't have the measurements, so you have to manually do it.
Exactly. Yeah. So make sure that you're only advertising livable square footage. I got that question the other day. They had an unheated deck sort of enclosed attached to the house, and you know it's not livable square footage, and you can include it in it just like the garage. So make sure you do that. Okay, so that's a strata plan. And some people want to know how you tell how many strata lots are in the unit. Well, here you just look at the end of it, and you can see this building's got 36 strata lot units. And here's the unit entitlement. So there's strata lot 18. So in case some of you don't know how to do it, there are 98 shares out of 3,442. So I'm just going to divide that. 98 divided by 3,442 is 0.028%. So if there was a upcoming assessment or something like that, I'm just going to write that number down. 0.028 is their percentage ownership. So it's a very small ownership share. Okay, that's the strata plan. Bylaws. So the real estate council sort of has a high onus on you for bylaws, which some people think is reasonable, some people think is not reasonable. I lean towards more it being not reasonable. And that is, you're supposed to know what your buyer wants to do with the property and check the bylaws to see if the bylaws stop them from doing what they want to do with it. So what would be some things that you as a realtor, the real estate council would expect you to look in the bylaws to see? I wrote down about 6 things.
Mm-hmm. The most important is age and pets.
Age and pets. Yeah, because a few buildings out there have an age restriction, either no kids or you have to be 60 years old to live there or something like that. So check out the bylaws regarding, see this building's a non-smoking building. They made some rules about smoking. And I think this one's about, they made a one about, oh, this is still the smoking one. Okay, they made a rental one, I think, as well.
By the way, Glenn, 60 is illegal. You only can, it's either 55 or not at all.
Okay, I don't know the number. Okay. So they made a few rules here about move-in. I thought they made a rule about rentals. Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, so that this is the rental prohibition. So Terry mentioned about rentals and age. So make sure that if your buyer is interested in renting a unit out, you check the bylaws, because it doesn't matter what the seller's agent tells you. You as a buyer's agent need to check that out as well to make sure rentals are allowed or rentals are not allowed, smoking, age, both for children and if there's a minimum age or maximum age type thing. Any other things you should check for in the bylaws?
Mm-hmm. Well, an important one too is limited common property and who's responsible for it, because a lot of them, like townhouses, they have backyards. You want to know who's, looking after the maintenance of the landscaping.
Yeah, so you can look through here, and somewhere in here it'll talk about who an owner shall, and talks about the duties of the owner. So you can check that out. Yep. Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Oh. Lots of things.
I put down, I'm not sure if you talked about pets, but pets is an important thing. Yeah. So, hopefully if you're working with a buyer, I'm just looking for the pet thing. Hopefully if you're working with a buyer, you know about their pet situation. So I always like to look through this one because every bylaw has the prohibition list of things you can't do. So some buyers, barbecues are very important to them. So you check barbecues. Sometimes they talk about other things in here. I see E is a good one to look. Strata lot, no more than 2 persons for each bedroom, right? So if it's a young couple with a baby type thing, a 1 bedroom's not going to work for them type thing. So make sure that's maximum number of occupants. And pets is another one that you need to check.
Short-term rentals?
Short-term rentals, you know, if the buyer's thinking about doing that, that's a very important thing to look as well. Here's the barbecue thing. Can't use an electric or propane. Oh, it can't, only electric or propane. So make sure the buyer, if that's important, knows that. Can't hang their laundry on the balcony. They'll be disappointed to know that. Here's your for sale signs, 10 by 24. And here's the pet one. So I always want to check the pet one, make sure it's not going to be an issue for my buyer. So here's the whole thing. They've got a long thing about pets. So read it through. So it looks like the dog is 16 inches in height and under 30 pounds. So, and here's their rental bylaw. Okay, so there they go. They had it at 2. So now here's a mistake that we as agents make. So it looks like you could have 2 rentals, right? It's restricted to 2. But if you remember up at the top, at the very beginning, we found that they changed their rental bylaw. Somewhere in here. So they've changed it to 0. Here it is. So make sure that you know that you don't just look through the middle part of it. That's why it's so important to have recent bylaws, because you just don't know what's gone on. A lot of agents get the bylaws from the seller when they bought the place 2-3 years ago, but it's not worth the $10, $20, $30 for bylaws just because it's so risky that they made bylaws and like this rental prohibition and you don't know about it, even though the bylaws farther down talk about rentals being allowed. Does everyone follow that? So there it is. I've done that a long time ago. I was advertising 2 rentals allowed. An agent called me, Glenn, that's not right. I go, yes, it is. And I showed him 22A in the bylaws. He says, Glenn, look on page 1. And I looked on page 1 and they'd made the rule about rentals. I was embarrassed, but it was a learning process. So I'm just telling that to you that, you know, do check all the documents. Sometimes those documents are at the very end. I'm not sure if there's any documents into this one. There's not. So I worry when the document is not signed, but because these are stamped, remember at the beginning it's stamped. Somewhere I saw the, yeah, right there, the stamps that I was pretty confident that these are legit bylaws, and there's another stamp. So I'm not worried. If those stamps weren't there, I was worried that someone just printed them off their computer and they're not actually the real ones.
You have to check the date of when they were registered, that they match off with what is the regulations that they're putting forward, because the old ones, yeah, you've got the registrations on the title, so those get pulled. But if they were superseded,
yeah,
that's where your problems arise.
It gets complicated, yeah. So those are probably, is there anything else I want to look?
Well, there's one other one, maybe for some people it's important, is to see if there's any new bylaws in regards to cannabis.
Yeah, that could be an issue, absolutely. And as well, if your buyer looks at the unit and wants to renovate it, like this unit's in original condition. So if your buyer is going to renovate it, it'd be a smart idea to talk to them about what the strata requires for renovations. There's probably someone here talks about if you want to renovate, what you need to do, get permission from the strata. Mm-hmm. And so make sure your owner gets permission to put in laminate floors and all those things. I'm not sure where that, I didn't see that actually in these bylaws, but it's, no water beds, no TV.
No smoking in bed. Oh my goodness. Oh.
Yeah, so somewhere in here it'll talk about alterations. So here it is. Yeah, so no alterations without permission to the Strata Council. It's just making sure the buyer knows they need to get permission from the Strata Council. Also interesting, you can enclose the balcony with permission from the Strata Council. So again, you know, going through that whole process. Okay, that is the bylaws. Any questions about bylaws before we go on?
So yes, is it not mandatory sort of for buyer's agents to actually read all of those, you know, together with their client? Or, I mean, some realtors, they just hand off the bylaws to the buyers and have them look them over. What's your take on that?
There's no rule about it, but what I said earlier at the beginning, the Real Estate Council wants you to be aware of any concerns about this property that might affect your buyer. So in other words, if your buyer had three people, like husband and wife and a kid, and this building allows 2 people in a 1-bedroom, they're buying a 1-bedroom, the Real Estate Council would expect you to have read the bylaws and realize that they can't buy this unit. If they told you, I want to buy a rental unit, and this building doesn't allow rentals, the Real Estate Council would want you to have known that this building doesn't allow rentals and tell your buyer, you know, you shouldn't buy this unit because it doesn't allow rentals. So you have to become aware of what's significant to your buyer and let them know about that. So that's sort of the guiding principle. So how you accomplish that goal, it's a personal thing between you and the buyer. So you can read them all, you can just scan them yourself, you cannot read them. There's no rule, but just have to let them know what's important.
Okay.
I think Glenn has on Dropbox some wording that basically advises the buyer that, well, that they are advised to fully read them and not rely totally on on their agent to do that. I've seen that come up on, well, Glenn's got it in Dropbox.
Okay.
Yeah.
You should find that if you're writing one.
Yeah.
Okay, so now for insurance, basically this is the Strata insurance policy. So what I like to look at is to see when the expiry date is. So expiry is October 2020, so a long time from now. And you want to look at the deductibles, see what they are. In my mind, they're very, very low, $10,000 type thing. So very small. I want to show you I'm just going to try and find it now. Okay. I want to find you another Strata insurance document. And that might be easier said than done.
Did anybody see the news this morning all about the Strata insurance? Tony from CHOA was on there saying what the government is doing.
No, I didn't hear what they're doing. I saw it on the paper, but I didn't read it. What did they say?
Yeah, no, it was pretty interesting. He said really there's not much that can be done with the insurance companies because the government cannot regulate them, but they're really going to start to look to make some changes to the Strata Property Act in terms of who's going to be responsible for what with insurance policies now. So there might be more onus put on the individual owner on their insurance policy as opposed to having everything covered by the big policy for the whole building. So
Interesting.
we'll see how that works out. But
see, they could solve the problem very easily by making the depreciation reports mandatory, because that's one of the issues that they have is that buildings don't do depreciation reports, and then the insurance company doesn't like that because it's unknown. Okay,
right.
So here's the one I do property manage for 1 unit, and here is the one I just got in the mail 2-3 days ago. And you can see what the deductible is. It's you know, for sewer $250, water $250. So you know, someone's flooding their bathtub, they're writing a big check. So that's why it's so important to check. You can see the big difference between 2 stratas. One strata in White Rock is $10,000, and this one in downtown Vancouver is $250. So that's a big difference in what I told the buyer for the White Rock place is you just send them the insurance policy, right? After subject removal, I say, you know, go to your insurance company, and they've got all this information that's on this piece of paper, and that's how they get insurance. It's very difficult for a buyer to get insurance without this document. So you just email this to the buyer after subject removal, and they go to their insurance agent and get insurance coverage. Any questions there? Okay.
the overall strata paying the insurance will be lower dependent on the height of the deductibles. So they may be, you know, that becomes punitive to one unit. If you wreck your sewer and are held accountable, then you're responsible, and everybody, only you paid the deductible, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, because the other issue, see what also happens in these downtown condos with those high deductibles is the tenants who are always causing the problem. They're overflowing their bathtubs, they're hanging their laundry on the sprinkler heads, and they're doing all the problems. The owners aren't. And so that's one of the issues, is that buildings with lots of tenants and the buildings who don't do depreciation reports. But that's a separate
There's
issue for this
kickbacks to
meeting.
the property managers. They're clamping down on that, Glenn. If you're getting a fee for from the insurance company for placing with them, they're going to come after you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what they said on the news this morning too. They're discovering a lot of the property managers are taking kickbacks and commissions by referring them to specific insurance companies. So that's the one thing they're hoping they're going to clamp down on.
Interesting, yeah. So here's a balance sheet. You know, none of us should pretend to be accountants and talk about it. But basically, only thing I do is I look to see if the contingency fund is somewhat similar to what the Form B says. And I can see $90,000. And I remember the Form B talking about $90,000. So it sort of looks good to me. I don't see anything unusual on here. Sometimes you see things like a roofing fund and a plumbing fund. So you go, well, that's good. They've got, you know, 20,000 a plumbing fund and 20,000 a roofing fund. But that's pretty well all I do is I just look at one number because you and I aren't accountants. And just that's what I do for financial statements. Okay. Depreciation report. So some people get scared about depreciation reports. And what I typically do is I just look at one page. And that is upcoming repairs. Like you know, you can read through it. Some of you will read through it. Some of you won't look at anything. But I'll just find, this is, I just want to, usually it's near the bottom. And you want a little graph. And that's not quite the graph I want. They're giving different models of how to pay for it. I'll talk about that model in a second. But oh, there we are. That's what I want. Now I've got to flip this, and I probably can't flip this while I'm sharing screen. So just a second. Maybe I can. I can't. Well, anyways, I don't need to flip it. You guys can see. So basically, this is what I show the buyer, and I'd say to them, you know, this is what's going to happen. In the next year, there's going to be a $20,000 assessment, $20,000. In 2022, there's going to be a $60,000, $70,000 one. In 2023, there's going to be 120, and then there's not going to be anything again until 2032. That's what the person who did this report recommends for repairs in the building. And so again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the, so buyers don't get scared. I'm going to say 120,000. So if you remember, I wrote down the unit entitlement for this person. It's 0.028%. So 120,000 in 2023, if you take 120,000 times their percentage ownership, which is 0.028, $3,300. So again, buyers get scared thinking there's going to be an assessment of 120,000, but you tell them it's going to be $3,300. So you've got a couple of situations now. You can buy it anyways. You can ask for a price reduction of $3,300. You can ask the seller to pay it. You can add up 2022's number, which is 70,000 times the unit entitlement, whatever. But that way the buyer knows it. And this is an easy chart to figure out. And so if you're wondering what the 2023 and 2022 expenses are, you can look somewhere in here and it'll talk about it. When we find the chart, just have to go down a bit. Yeah, so here it is. It tells you what he recommends: ceiling, wall mount lanterns, lamp fixtures, irrigation valves. That's all the things that happen in 2022 and 2023. There's probably a big item as well, if we look for it. 30,000 for a rooftop heater of some sort. I'm not sure what exactly that is, but that's some type of rooftop system. But there's going to be a bigger ticket item. Here's a new roof of 117,000 in 2023. There's the big ticket item right there. new roof in 2023. So the question comes in is, why is this depreciation report with so many numbers and so much thing? And it deals with how people think. And it's all of us who are in this meeting today think differently regarding expenses. Some of us who are going to buy a new car, go out tomorrow and buy a new car and get 100% financing. Some of us will know we need a new car and save up for the next 5 years, and 5 years from now write a check cash for that car. So that's the same thing with Stratas. When they have to get a new roof in 2023, how do they pay for that roof? So basically, these depreciation reports talk about 3 different ways to do it. Number 1 is sort of maintain existing things, and in 2023, do a huge assessment, $3,300 a person, and then you can do the work. Other people say we should raise the maintenance fees by about $40 a month over the next 3 years, and if we do that, everyone paying an extra $40, $50 a month. In 2023, we'll have all our money saved up. We won't have to have any special levies. We can do the roof without a special levy. Other people say that's too much to increase our fees. Let's just do $20 a month strata increase, and we'll each pay $1,500 in 2023 for the new roof. So, you know, there's no right and wrong way. Each of us will feel that one way is better than the other, but each strata will decide on which of the methods they're going to do, whether they're going to 100% finance, you know, increase the strata fees, but that's what they're talking about, like the straight line method and the current reserve method. And usually there's a third one on here, which I don't see. Does that make sense to everybody?
Glenn, is that a standard and mandated form and format for?
No. There's no mandated form for a depreciation report.
But you know what, Glenn? It's good that you picked Dan Leakers, because the reserve data analysis, he's done almost all of them on the coast, and his format is pretty much the same consistently.
Yeah.
It's an easy one to read.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so you also, another thing to look at, you know, because depreciation reports have been around for a while. You know, if you get one that's 7, 8, 9 years old, it's not really relevant anymore. This one was done January 27, 2020. So really new. Okay, that's about all I look at on a, and sometimes I find it helpful to read. See, he talks about here, well, here's the 3 mixed models, and there it does. So
the thing is, in the beginning too, there's always a summary. That's all you have to read is the little 2-3 page summary.
So here he's done it exactly that. So he does $86 per unit installment or $185. See, or, you know, he's got different choices. So you just read this over, figure it out, and it's pretty simple. So I typically read this. I usually read the last 2-3 pages, and I look at that little model with the graphs, and I'm good to go. Okay, we just got 1 or 2 minutes left. What else is on this list? Minutes. So basically, when I look through minutes, I typically just look through for the AGMs typically. And I'm just going to see if I can quickly find the AGM. Looks a little bit different. It's not that one. Here it is, the annual general meeting. And what I like to look for is I like to read what the president has to say, because usually the president is pretty honest to the owners and regarding what's happening. And he talks about what's going on with the building type thing. And he talks about what they're, you know, people are always worried, what's going to happen with the strata fees? You know, he's talking about increasing them by 5%, so people know what's happening in the future, right? And so here, this is one thing I thought interesting when I read this. It says that they're going to do, so this meeting took place in October 2019, and it says that they're going to update their depreciation report. So I thought, you know, because sometimes an agent gives you an old depreciation report, so make sure that now you know there was one done after October 2019, which of course is the one we've got. Okay, and here you know that they're going to change the entry phone system. So you learn quite a bit by reading what the president has to say in the AGM. And that's what I tend to look for in that. Okay, so stop share. And I want to go back.
You're doing very well, Glenn, with your sharing documents.
Exactly. I've had some practice.
Yeah.
Okay, so here is the MLS listing for this property. So if you can remember, the Form B did have 342 on it. Let's see if he's got parking spots written on here. I don't even know if he does or not. He does, parking spot 32 and 18. So again, he's got the correct information. So there's no issues with any confusion, you know, because let's pretend he had, this happened to me. I looked at the Form B and it had 33 instead of 32, and I contact the owner and he goes, no, that's my spot. And I says, well, the documents I got from the Strata says it's different. Then he texts me back 15 minutes later and he remembered that he switched parking spots the day he moved in because his neighbor wanted his parking spot. So for the past 5 years, he's been parking in his neighbor's spot. And so now it was lucky because he showed me his parking spot, everything like that. I had a photo on MLS of his parking spot. And then when I got the Form B, it was a different one. So make sure you check this information because now we know Form B, PDS, and Realtor MLS is all correct. So if you remember the square footage, does anyone remember what the square footage was that we got?
1,090 something.
I think it was 1,050, if I remember correctly. It was 97.6. Let me just see what that is.
Yep.
1,050. So he's off by 6 square feet. I don't really worry about that. If it's off, and he doesn't have in the comments how he got his measurements. Measurements taken by Realtor. Okay, that's interesting. So I'm not sure where he got that, but so if the square footage is different, what I like to have in the contract is to say buyers aware the strata plan square footage is 1,050. If this number was like 1,065, 1,070, I like to tell the buyer the legal square footage, right? Because that's the legal square footage, whatever was on the strata plan.
Grant Marshall put one up last week at 2,816. That was actually 2,616. Does 200 square feet make a difference?
It does. I like what this realtor did as well, which I encourage you all to do, is he didn't just say 1 dog's allowed, he put down the size. So that's a very, because some people have got small dogs, big dogs, whatever, just saves you time and it makes you professional because you know exactly what the pet rule is, right? No age restriction. Terry, you talked about the age thing here. He's got no age restriction, no rentals, no age restriction. So here's the smoking restriction. He's been very thorough in what he's got on his comments because he's obviously read the bylaw. So it's a very good thing. All of you should do the same thing because that makes you look professional because you know the answers to the questions. They're there.
And you know what? I'm glad you said that because that's really good when realtors do that because that's where buyers see what it is and right away they know it's not something for them and then you don't have to deal with all these people that it's not going to work for them anyway. So
exactly. And a lot of realtors call me with questions and I say, I think I've got that in the comments because of course I know I do. I think I've got that in the comments. Yeah, there's only 1 dog allowed or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
good.
But the seller's going to read that on MLS and say, well, why didn't you tell them about the fabulous view and beautiful bathroom? He's used up all the space to tell you about the strata details and doesn't tell you very much about the unit itself.
Yeah, there's not much to, you look at the first 4 pictures. Oh, you see, it's in original condition with nice furniture. I'm not sure if you guys can see the photos. Anyways, this realtor also thinks like me because he's got in his realtor remarks, accepted offer, subject removal July 3rd, right? So again, it's a professional way. You're not wasting your time calling him, touch basing him, trying to make an appointment to show today because like me, he doesn't show property that has accepted offers on. Okay, so those are the documents that's my challenge to you is to have your documents either in a Dropbox link that's in Realtor Marks or to have them on attachments like he does. That's how a professional realtor does it. And it saves you a lot of time and goes from there. Anyone have any questions before we're done? I'll just tell you one thing. A realtor in our office has been bugging the agent, like we're the buyer's agent, and they've been bugging the seller's agent for quite a few days to try and get the Strata documents because they want to read the Strata documents. And I said to him, why do you want the Strata documents? He says, because we want to read them before we put the offer in. I says, get the offer accepted and then worry about the Strata documents because he's been trying to get them for 3 to 4 days. And so then yeah, you're right, Glenn. So he called the agent today and they have an accepted offer. And so of course, he's quite disappointed now because his buyer really liked the unit. So he had his priorities mixed up because it seems like it might be a smart idea to try and read the strata minutes, but it doesn't really matter anymore because he can't buy that unit anymore, someone else is. So I always tell people, get the offer accepted, then worry about the fine details about, insurance, strata documents, pet approval to, put in laminate floors, get all that done after you have an accepted offer, not before, because then that way you've tied up the property. Okay, any other comments, any other words of wisdom somebody wants to share with the office before we?
Hey, Glenn, I had a question last week to you. I wrote an offer on a Bearland Strata lot, and the only the strata conditions was all the strata for the minutes and everything that we just looked at.
Yeah.
But it's such a overkill for a strata lot. Does anybody do anything different? Do they use the same conditions for a strata, Bearland strata lot?
Well, was there a management company?
Good question.
Because if there's a management company, then there'll be monthly fees and there'll be a Form B and all those things. If it's not a management company, then it's often there's no documents and you have to use the non-conforming strata clause.
Well, I use this clause and we're getting all the documents. We've got all the documents, but I just thought it was a bit overkill, and I wondered if there were two separate clauses for strata. No.
Depends on the services that they're offering. If the Strata Corporation takes on a lot of what would normally be municipal services, then you're going to have more involved. But if basically, sometimes you'll go strata because of drainage, like in that Ridgeview subdivision, it's only to maintain the drainage that there's a strata corp. So you only have one item to look at, but in other ones, you've got road maintenance and a number of other items. So you have to look at each one separately, I think, Mike.
Yeah, but I think my advice would be just ask for it all, because that way, if there is something that they don't do or they don't have to provide, they'll tell you and they'll explain why.
That's basically what I did, Terry. I just asked for it all, knowing that it was overkill.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if there are strata minutes, you need to give them to the buyer. Even if the strata minutes are only 1 page long, you still need to give them to the buyer. If there's no strata minutes in a non-conforming strata, then there's nothing to give the buyer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If they have a bank account, with $10,000 or $50,000 in to maintain the drainage, then there's financial statements to give the buyer.
Mm-hmm.
So it sort of depends on how the strata is run. Some stratas will have a bank account, and some of the non-conforming stratas don't have a bank account.
That's right.
But
Thanks.
You don't want your buyer buying it and then not getting documents that the strata has available to give to the buyers.
Exactly.
Rules, there could be rules. Every strata technically could have rules, or they could just be using the standard Strata Property Act rules, and there's no special rules that they've made.
Hi, Glenn.
Hi there. Do you want to say a quick word before we're done? Because we're done right now.
Good morning, Gibsons Realtors. We've of course been hard at it, even during COVID. My office has been open every day. We've been grateful to be able to help many people buy and sell during this time. And of course, COVID's changed things when it comes to the way I can work as a notary, so that I've signed with clients the sale or purchase of properties in the Lower Mainland, from Portugal, from Germany, from New Zealand. And so it's actually interesting. So clients in Gibsons can be buying property in Gibsons, and I can represent them as a notary sitting in my Vancouver office or my Langley office. And so that's been one of the positive changes for the legal profession during COVID, which makes me able to help your clients more easily. And so I'd be glad to continue to make my services available to you as a notary if you'd like to use me. So I just wanted to share that with you. Do you have any legal questions of me?
Okay. It's
All
very
right.
close to 10 o'clock and everyone's got to go on tour. So we want to end the meeting unless someone has another comment. We want to end it up. Any other words of wisdom? Okay, I'm glad you all joined us, and we'll talk again next week. Have a
Okay,
great week, Sally.
Okay, have a good week.
Bye.
thank you.